If you've been following Ruby's story, you'll remember that she was having issues being started and staying running. It was usually after having been run for a while and then left to park for a very short time. It seemed it was something electrical, as fuel was always being delivered yet not flooded, possibly something to do with heat soak. However, this morning was one of those rare mornings where she didn't want to start at all when cold. Well, I've been waiting exactly for this to happen so I can try to cut a video and run a proper diagnostic, but hey, the thing has been highly unpredictable.
Welcome back to DuckmanCycles and VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. We're back today with my 1968 Fastback, also known as Ruby.
Just wanted to say thank you to everybody that subscribed to me, everybody that stuck with me through Patreon after all the difficulties that I've been having over the last couple years about getting videos up and the things that go on in my personal life. But, hey, it's just, you gotta keep moving forward, you gotta keep your head up, I mean, that's the only options that I've got. After releasing my previous videos where I talked about the issue, so many people flooded in the comments and suggestions, and I thank all of you for them. Some of the suggestions were to replace fuses and ignition switches, or to check the wiring for voltage with a test light, or even to go down the road of changing out the fuel injection. But despite me using the word carburetors in my problem description, I'm not really sure where people were going with that, but almost all of them were logical choices. However, in the defense of those that left their solutions, it would be safe to assume that the remarks came from folks that were probably not VW people and don't understand how a Volkswagen is set up. Volkswagens are weird and have idiosyncrasies not found on other cars. First, there are several electrical circuits on an air-cooled Volkswagen that are not fuse protected. The biggest is the main power to the ignition switch and the charging circuits, the power from the switch to the starter, and lastly, the ignition system at the engine itself. There may be other circuits that are not fuse protected, but these are just the first ones that come to mind. This is just how it came designed by the Volkswagen engineers and their infinite wisdom. Historically speaking, there have been many Volkswagen electrical fires started by ignition wiring circuit coming loose and grounding out in the engine compartment. Often, in this case, the ignition switch will just burn out as that's the weakest link. Ask me how I know. Or the ignition wire will burn itself up in its full length through the body of the car and fries the rest of the wires bundled with it, ruining the entire electrical harness. Yeah, it stinks like hell, and in worst case, it sets the carpet of the headliner on fire. Not exactly the way I want to spend my Sunday afternoon joyride. On my Beetles in the past, I always installed a circuit breaker on the ignition circuit to help prevent this. But this Fastback is different, but only because the wiring just isn't easy to get to, so I've neglected to do this during my ownership. But that will change, just not in this video. So with that said, this is not a fuse problem. I tried to explain that in my comment responses, and the follow-up suggestions I received is to start checking the voltage along the ignition wiring. Yes, that would be the next logical thing to do. But again, in the defense of folks that aren't familiar with these cars, there is another Volkswagen-ism here to discuss. And that is, there is already a test light installed on the ignition circuit from factory.
What?
That's right. In fact, there are two of them. And this is true from all late 1966 and 67 Volkswagen models and up. Ruby just happens to be a 68, so she's got it. Now those of you that are familiar with this already know where I'm going. Yes, the ignition circuit test lights work just fine. How do they work? Well, the backup lights are connected to the hot side of the coil, and with their own fuse, I might add. This was created as a band-aid by Volkswagen only to comply with regulations at the time. It was just much easier and cheaper to hop off an existing ignition circuit for the backup lights that was already in the rear of the car, than to run a new wiring circuit all the way to the front fuse box. Well, if the backup lights are working, then the ignition system is getting juice. And during this saga, the backup lights never failed me. Yes, I checked them by the roadside. Every time that Ruby wouldn't start, the backup lights always functioned just fine. So it's my thought, and this was determined by my 30 plus years in the world of computers, that when problems get weird and inconsistent, it's usually something in the electronics. It's rarely something mechanical, as mechanical issues are far easier to anticipate and reproduce symptoms of, such as clockwork. Electronics, on the other hand, well, they can get derpy enough to be elected president.
Go, you know the thing.
Well, what does Ruby have that is electronic? Only 3 things. The radio that's currently disconnected, so nope. The USB phone charger in the lighter socket, yeah, again, nope. And the ignition module in the distributor. Ding, ding, ding! I bet that's where the problem is. I think it's best that we start here. I've got a spare ignition module to replace it, and if I get lucky, I may not even have to adjust the ignition timing, but I will check it. The task is simple enough and applies to most air-cooled Volkswagens. Only a few tools are likely to be needed. Before getting started, it's a good idea to make sure the ignition switch is off. If you're truly paranoid, you can disconnect your battery, but if you don't know what you're doing, well, bring it to tech session. I disconnected the wiring at the coil. The electronic module has 2 wires, a positive and the negative. Pull them both off of their respective locations. Then remove the connectors from the wire. This is important, and you'll see why later. Pop off the distributor cap and put it out of the way, then pull off the rotor. In the case of this unit, there's another rotor underneath which contains all the magnets, 1 per cylinder. This is what triggers the Hall effect sensor in the electronics module. Some systems use a flat disc like this, other systems have a cylindrical drum. If you've got the flat one, remove it. If you have problems at the next step, however, you can also remove the drum style too. Underneath you'll find the electronic module. I've seen these held in with flat or Phillips head screws, but this one had an Allen head on it. Remove this retaining screw, and out comes the module. If you remove the connectors as was suggested earlier, you should be able to pull the wires through the small hole on the side of the distributor. Here's our old module. You helping, Boomer? Here's our new module. And they look to be identical. That's a good thing. Makes it nice and easy to just drop into place. And rewire it the same way. Guess I gotta give you some attention, huh? You miss your sister, don't you? Yeah. You finally got laid, and now she's gone. I know. If we don't get another baby, soon we'll make sure we get you a girlfriend. He's been giving me a lot more attention since Crash has been gone. But he's gaining weight. That's right, Crash isn't stealing your food anymore. You need to go in the pool, buddy. Your feathers are kind of crusty. Go play. Oop, Crash. The module is keyed with a divot, and it's easy to replace in the correct orientation. You cannot easily put it in wrong. Get your new module, gently feed the wires through the distributor, drop it in place, pay extra attention to the little divot, press it gently into position, and then return the securing screw. Keep them pressed down in the distributor with very little slack. This is important because if the wires are allowed to rise upwards for any reason at all, the magnetic rotor that goes in the next step will eat right through the wiring. Again, ask me how I know. Reinstall the magnets, reinstall the rotor, and then reinstall the distributor cap. For the ends of these wires, I prefer to solder them over crimping. There is far less chance for them to come loose that way, and connections will just last a lot longer. But do as you wish. If you're just going to try and crimp by crushing connectors with a pair of pliers, do yourself a favor and get the right crimping tool. Now, return the wires back to the coil. The red one goes on the positive side, the same as the ignition power circuit and backup lights, and the black one goes on the negative side of the coil by itself. Nothing else should be connected on the negative side other than a tachometer sensor wire, and most Volkswagens do not have this from the factory anyway. At this point, we're ready to see if Ruby's going to start, so cross your fingers. And presto, she's running again. Hopefully she stays fixed without a repeat of the previous shutdowns or shutoffs that I was experiencing before. Well, now that she's running again, I figured I'd give her a little chance to warm up. There's no chokes on these carburetors, so it does take a little longer than the regular car. But we'll give her that opportunity, and then we'll check the timing. Well, the timing looks good. I really expected I'd probably need some slight adjustment, but I can leave it alone for today. There isn't much to these cars, and it's almost always something really silly or really stupid when it breaks, so all you have to do is just use a little bit of imagination and a little bit of technical know-how, look the car over, and you'll figure it out. It's always good to have a technical service manual by your side, and if you're in the local Pensacola Bay area, it's probably a nice idea to come on by to Tech Session. Hey, I'm going to advertise that in here again just because, but Tech Session is always a fun thing that we do. Once a month, usually the first Saturday of every month. Check out rareairvw.com, look at our Facebook group page, and you'll find our dates and locations for our tech sessions. Alright, well, it's been about 30 minutes, so let's give it the old litmus test and see if she starts up. About 90% of the time when it sits about 30 minutes, once I turn that key, usually it'll start, or maybe not start at all, but only you start and run for a couple seconds and die, so let's see if this makes a difference. I'll be damned. Not only she start up, but she's revving a whole lot faster than she used to be. And what that translates to is she's a little quicker. She's a little bit faster than she was. Well, there was definitely something wrong with the electronic ignition. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's going to be consistent and keep starting, but only time will tell. So we'll drive it around for the next few weeks and just see what happens. Otherwise, everybody that's watching this video and everybody that contributed to try to help me through this problem, thank you so much. Really, I appreciate it. Thanks to all my Patreons, thanks to everybody out there that's followed me, and thank you for everybody that's taking care of me through these hard times. I guess that's pretty much it for today, so licky, likey, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to plug that dingle belly so that way you get updates every time I upload a video. Check out duckshit.net for all of my different social media links. That's right, you can find me up on Instagram, Facebook, even up on my Twitter page. Yes, that's right, I'm in a bunch of different places. And I've got more than one YouTube channel. So for those of you that are saying, hey Duckman, you haven't uploaded anything in a while, that's false. I've been putting up probably about 1 or 2 videos a week. They're just not necessarily on this channel. So please check me out in the other places. Give me a little follow, a little licky-likey now and then. I really appreciate you guys. So we'll be back hopefully in the near future with another Volkswagen update on something. I'm not sure what we're going to work on yet, but I'm going to make a list. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.